welcome to our palace. Welcome to the new Sportsline podcast here on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neil. Hey, nowhere in the country are people just like you starving for sports content, especially when it pertains to the local teams and athletes that you follow. You know, many moons ago, my boss at Sportsnet remarked that there must be something in the water in the Hamilton, Halton, and Niagara regions because of the large amount of talented broadcasters that were on the way up. And as we showcased on Wednesday, we have another. And folks, this guy has done play-by-play for all the major sports at a very high level. Most familiar at this point, you know him as the television voice of the OHL's Niagara IceDogs for 16 years. In addition, he's done play-by-play for all McMaster Marauders sports broadcasts and covering the likes of football along with women and men's basketball and volleyball on television and radio dating back to 1992. Let's not forget he's got a wonderful wife and is the father of an up-and-coming goaltender who might be dreaming of the Professional Women's Hockey League. Steve Clark, always a pleasure to join you. We've done so much work together, and it's to sit down and chat about yourself and what's going on with your life in this kind of format. I've been kind of looking forward to it.
I've been really looking forward to it as well, Bubba. I always loved working with you back when we did, McMaster football and traveled the road and things like that. So this format as well. I mean, this is my first time in this studio. It's huge. I'm very impressed. I'm almost a little bit overwhelmed, but it's fantastic being here. Really, it is.
And you'd been at the old one on Hunter Street.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but I have been there. Yes, it has been there, and it was antiquated, quaint, however you want to put it.
It was tired.
Compared to this, yes. There you go. There you go.
Let's start off where this all starts, and I love just kind of digging back into the old days and where this started. We kind of grew up in Canada. You're probably a hockey fan. Where did this love for sports all of a sudden come for you? How did it all begin?
Well, it actually began for me, just when I moved to Canada from England in 1980, and I can still remember, even though I was only 6, 7, 8 years old, my dad taking me to soccer matches. I've been to Old Trafford when I was 6 or 7 years old. I've supported Ipswich Town, forever. So that love of sports was always there. And then we moved to Canada right away. CFL football, Major League Baseball, hockey. We consumed all of them, and I just became a huge fan. And I've always been a little bit of a stats guy, especially like a lot of people when you realize that those dreams of playing are not going to be happening. But I had that love of sports, and I was just naturally became drawn to that broadcasting side of things. I said I want to be involved somehow, in some way, shape, or form, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to at least do it on a part-time basis.
What was it? Was there someone that just electrified you that you're like, I think we've all kind of mirrored ourselves somewhat. You never want to copy, but there's someone that you kind of in your head, it's like, I want to sound like that person.
Bob Cole.
Ooh, okay.
Bob Cole was the guy for play-by-play. I just loved how he called a game and the way his voice rose and fell, and he was the voice of Saturday nights and Hockey Night in Canada. And also it was Sportsline with Jim Taddy and Mark Hebscher. I mean, my dad and I would sit and watch that show, and we would just love it. The Hebsy Awards, the chemistry they had together, the way they did highlights together. I mean, those guys were real draws for me, and Tom Cheek as well. Listening, back in the era, listening to baseball a lot on the radio, outdoors on a Saturday afternoon or something like that.
Soundtrack of summer.
Radio Beyond in the background with Tom Cheek and Jerry Howarth.
And both of those teams that you talked about, and I talk about the broadcast teams there, the chemistry. There's something about when two people, we've seen it before.
Yeah.
We've probably worked with people where you've worked with them and it.
Yep.
You can't find, you talk, I talk. You just can't find that chemistry. And then there's other people, and I don't mind saying this, calling games with you for football.
Yeah.
It just, you talk, I speak, then whatever. And then there's joking, and then there's serious. Like, it just seems to work, the chemistry.
Yeah, and that's something, I mean, it's something you can manufacture, but you can't manufacture. I mean, when you're calling games with somebody new, sure, you sit down and talk to them, but when the microphone goes on, you don't know how they are. I mean, obviously, I know the type of personality that you had on air, and when you got live games, but we had never worked together. But we had never really actually had met. I don't think until not long before we started calling games together. But you're right, it was just one of those instant chemistry things. Maybe it's a similar personality, a similar passion for the sport, or just a similar vibe. It just clicked. Same thing I have with Ed Burkholder, who I call the IceDog games with, and that was instantaneous as well, right off the bat. It was just one of those things that just clicked.
And he's got that large personality too, like Howie Meeker, may I say, Don Cherry. Like, it's big, large, and you nurse it properly.
Yeah, and that was something that did take a little bit of time, because when you're broadcasting, both of you can't be small and both of you can't be big. So you've got to find that balance. So there are times in which if he's understated, which, is not that often, then I have to be a little bit more overstated. But for the most part, I just tee him up. And you bring up the Don Cherry. I learned that from Ron McLean. Like, just the way he would just tee up Don Cherry and then off Don Cherry would go. And that's the same way with Ed, except I think he's way, way, way more analytical into the subtlety and the nuances of the game. Our first intermissions are fantastic, just the way that he breaks down the game, and I just end up kind of watching and listening to him, and then having to throw the question in every once in a while. But it said chemistry, and I've been lucky to have chemistry with most of the people, or almost all the people that I've worked with, but a couple times it's a little bit more special, a little bit more natural, like it was with you and like it is with Ed.
On the flip side, I've also heard and seen you call games by yourself. And I've done it a couple of times, and I struggled. I need someone to bounce something off of. I'm wondering, am I talking too much? Am I talking too little? You seem to handle that. And how do you prepare? Obviously, preparation is key.
Yes.
But doing games by yourself?
Not easy. Again, right, I like bouncing things off people, and plus I'm well aware of my limitations in terms of not having played the high-level sports, so I'm less of an analyst, but I do try to become a student of the game that I'm watching, and I do try to pick up the subtlety of the terms, but I don't try to be something that I'm not. And the good thing about when I'm doing the McMaster stuff is that when there's a timeout or there's a break, then they basically just kind of shut the microphone off and have the crowd come in. So that helps with that natural pause. But I've got lots of notes and lots of filler notes and, all of those things there just to see. And I do enjoy calling games by myself. I'd rather have somebody else there with me, but there is something about just you in that chair and you're just kind of looking at the game and it's just you bringing that action. That's also pretty special too.
And people certainly know you from these games at McMaster Sports. Obviously, we talked about the IceDogs, and we'll get to both of those entities of your life as well. But there's another part of your life, which to me, I have no idea how you do this. You do all of this, but yet there's the kids that are watching on social media or watching this podcast are saying, that's my teacher. What?
Yep. High school teacher, 24 years now. Started off in the Durham region, Ajax, and then to Whitby. Then I moved back into this area because I'm a Hamilton guy, and I've been with Nelson High School. That last 16th year there now. So teaching law, history, civics, and my voice is probably heard too much by a lot of people.
What is there something about teaching that really just kind of turns you on? Like, there's I've always said this: medical and teaching and education, like, it takes a special person to be able to have the patience, first of all, to deal with today's kids and to be able to teach as well too, and be an effective teacher.
Well, patience is something I found out I had a lot of when I became a teacher, because you have to, right? Because a lot of times you're playing the long game with these students. And if you blow up at them in October, then you realize, I got 3 months left with these students. And that's a long way to go. And it's a long way for them to go. It's a long way for you to go. So listen, I try to just be myself as much as I can. I don't really bring up the sports thing a lot, though I know there are some people who who do know, I try to keep those things kind of separate when I'm in the education, but I don't shy away from answering questions about it. But and teaching, it has evolved a lot over the 24 odd years that I've been teaching too, in terms of not the students. Teenagers are teenagers; they haven't changed, but just the method of disseminating information and teaching and things like that. But I still love that feeling of being in front of the classroom and introducing something. I have a passion for law and for civics, and I'm a historian by trade, so that certainly helps too. But it keeps me busy, that's for sure.
Unreal. Now let's dig into the IceDogs here, sure. and I know you've been around long enough for this, and I'll just say a couple of names: Alex Pietrangelo, Alex Nedeljkovic, Carter Verhaeghe, Phil Tomasino, Akil Thomas. Yep. Those are real good players that, have reached the National Hockey League. But as a team, the Niagara IceDogs have not been in the postseason since 2019. And the real last run, and I guess they got to the Ontario Championship in, I think, 2016.
Yeah.
There's been so much negative about that IceDogs program. Where are they right now?
Well, and this is not me being a PR person by any stretch of the imagination, but it's slowly starting to rebuild that credibility. And you look at the standings, they're at the bottom of the standings, but they're playing a much more competitive brand of hockey. They've brought in Ben Boudreau as their coach. They have Bruce Boudreau as an advisor. I mean, it's not like Bruce is around every single day or whatever, but to have that credibility attached with that as help. And that's nothing against Ryan Kuwabara, who was the coach before, because I really liked how he handled the team too. But they're slowly building their way out. Listen, the headlines are the headlines. You can't run from it. You can't hide from it. It's been not a very good 2 or 3 years. There's been off-ice scandals and off-ice issues, and the on-ice product has sunk dramatically. Those are things you can't escape. But I do see the light at the end of the tunnel. I see talent on this team that, if they keep it together, has a chance to be very competitive, more next year. So right now I can see them starting to dig their way out and building that credibility back that they had, for the first, 10, 12 years of their existence.
And it's been tough because I think probably for the Niagara fans, and I'm going to be honest with you, I'm very surprised with the sort of lean years that program has had. But that Meridian Center getting 3, 4, 5,000 every night.
Yeah, the crowds have sunk during the week, but they're still around that 3,000 mark, which is not bad for junior hockey. A far cry from the 4,500 or so they were getting on Thursdays before. Sunday, they had North Bay in the building. They had over 5,000 people there. For a team that's 8 points out of the last playoff spot in a league that 16 out of 20 teams make the playoffs. The fans there, I don't know if resilient is the right word, dedicated, but they do love showing up for their junior hockey. They're very proud of showing up in a beautiful building, still like the Meridian Center. And they want this team to succeed. They really had embraced this team as the region's team, and I think they want that back. And that's the fans are second to none, because a run like this, I mean, I joke with people. I said 2019, to show you how long it's been since the IceDogs made the playoffs, Jason Robertson was a part of that team, right? Because he was picked up from Kingston, and so it's been a while. And that was the year in 2019 that they were supposed to make the run to the final. They got upset by Oshawa in the second round, and then since then it's been no playoffs at all.
Yeah, it has been great, and I think you talk about the franchise turning around. This weekend actually might have been a little example of it. That they're playing. What was it? 5 out of 6 points.
Yeah, you got to take baby steps, right? And Sudbury on the Thursday, a very good team. One of the top teams in the conference, in Eastern Conference, that's gone haywire in terms of how close it is. Outshot badly, but the goaltender played great. They got a point, and then they lost the lead in the third period too. And then they go beat Peterborough, and Peterborough has really stripped it down to the bone, but they beat them in overtime. And then they come back and beat a North Bay team that's also challenging for the conference lead and looked really good in doing it. And it was an exciting game. It had a lot of back and forth action. Again, the young players shining for Niagara. They've got a couple real special young players who I think are cornerstone.
Who are they?
Kevin He is a forward. 24 goals on a team that's 10th place is something else. He leads the OHL in shots. He's exciting. He's NHL draft eligible. He's ranked, I think, in that 90 to 100 mark right now, but I feel he'll be drafted by the NHL. And they have Ryan Robrick, who they drafted 2nd overall, 16 years old. He's 6'2". He's over 190 pounds. He looks like a man playing, just with that size. And he is tops, I believe, in rookie scoring and just got his first ever OHL hat trick. I don't think he's draft eligible for a couple years, but I guarantee you, if he keeps on this trajectory, he'll be that first round pick. That you'll be listing him like you were with the Petrangelos and the Phil Tomasinos and the Akil Thomases in the future.
Maybe even a World Junior opportunity.
Definitely down the I think next year I'd be shocked if he wasn't playing in the U18s. And then I'd be shocked if he wasn't considered down the road, again, if he keeps on this trajectory. He's that special a player.
There were a lot of real good games between the likes of the Hamilton Bulldogs and the Niagara IceDogs. And I remember a playoff series where the Bulldogs were favored, but man, did Niagara give them a lot of trouble, I think, in a 5-game series. Now it's 22, I think. 22 in a row. Like, how does that happen?
I honestly don't think I've seen, and the thing is, that streak is 22 regulation wins. No overtimes, no shootouts, just 22 straight wins. And it started in 2019 when the IceDogs started their descent, and the Bulldogs had that ascent, when they were the Memorial Cup and the OHL champion, and it's just continued. IceDogs have come close. There've been 1-goal games, but it just seems like it. Like the last game they played, it was 2-1 for Niagara late in the second, and you're thinking, is this it? Or are they thinking, well, how are we going to lose this one? And sure enough, they ended up losing 5-2 in the end. It's something, because the OHL players change.
Yes.
Right? Players change, but that continued dominance has continued. But I do predict it will end by the end of this year.
You heard it, guys. You heard it, folks.
It has to.
It has to. Because, I always like to, when I set up those games, that it's the QEW rivalry, but then there's something in my head that says, can you call it a rivalry when one team wins 21 or 22 in a row? It's so tough. But, hey, Niagara perspective, now seeing the Bulldogs not being in Hamilton, your thoughts?
It is a little different, but I was following all of the stuff with First Ontario pretty closely, and and once I kind of saw, you read kind of the tone of Michael Andelauer in the newspaper and the comments that he was making, they're thinking they're not real and it's not just your usual posturing. They're not very happy with City Council and each other. So. The one thing that got me was as soon as they went to Brantford, right away it became like the Brantford Bulldogs. Everything Brantford. And that leads me to believe that there's a chance they may not come back when First Ontario Centre is done. Great for Brantford. It actually reminds me a little bit of Niagara playing in a small building. They've put a lot of work into the Brantford Civic Centre because it was pretty old and dated, and they've done the best they can with it. And I know they want to build a new building there, but it is unusual. I'm a big fan of junior hockey in Hamilton. I could go back to Steelhawk days when I would go to a lot of games. I even went to Hamilton Duke games for goodness sake.
Okay. Not
a whole lot of people would want to admit to that. And so I love the idea of some form of elite hockey in Hamilton. But it is strange seeing them in Brantford for sure. Yeah, but they still win.
Well, the thing is too with the OHL thing. Why I was so happy with the OHL being in Hamilton was we had just come off, and even though they had won a Calder Cup, it was the American Hockey League. And I always say this to people that the problem with the American Hockey League to me is. People see the stars, some of them first-round draft picks, but somewhere in those stars' minds, in those players' minds, they're like, I can't wait to get out of here.
Yep.
Right? Because they want to get sent to the top team. They're playing for the farm team.
Yep.
And if they get sent down, they're like, ugh, I just went from being in, a airplane to a bus, right? Yep. There's never that feeling, that warm feeling, because I feel like they always want to get out of here. They can't wait to get out of here. Whereas with the Ontario Hockey League, you're seeing the best junior hockey in the planet.
You are, bar none. And you're seeing everybody seems to be on the way up. Like the oldest you can play in the league is when you're 20 years old, and then you've got to move on to the next level. So everybody's always going for something. So everybody is always hungry. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I did AHL hockey for a couple of years on TV, and I love calling the league. But it was one of those very transitory leagues. If the prospect was there, it's because he either got sent down or they needed him to have some seasoning. And you had the veterans down there who were just hoping to catch on back in. And I mean, the crowds, they struggled for crowds with the American Hockey League unless Toronto was in town. And that's just, the nature of the beast. But junior hockey, yeah, that's the great part. It's fast, it's flowing, the players make mistakes, but the talent level that you're seeing is amazing. And everybody is, you're either fighting to get drafted, you're fighting to get noticed. Now USports has become a very viable option for players. And so there's always something that these players are looking to do afterwards. But while they're there, they love their team and their community.
And as we've seen in Brampton, Hamilton, it's not just the players, the coaches and the executives too. They've all kind of moved on to the nation's capital.
Absolutely, yeah, no kidding, yeah.
What a story there.
It is. It fits. Yeah, I mean, listen, we would say a few years ago, like Steve Staios is not long for the OHL. He just had too much pedigree. He'd had so much success. He had built a championship team. And so forget it. I mean, obviously he's tethered to Michael Andelauer, but I mean, he went to Edmonton first and he was sought after executive. So it's not, and it would not surprise me at some point to see Jay McKee be elevated, whether it's to Ottawa or to another NHL staff. John Gruden, of course, went to the NHL and now he's coaching the Marlies. So, I mean, yeah, that's right. Hamilton has done very, very well developing players, developing executives, and dispersing them, around the NHL.
You're a Mac grad, also went to Western as well, too, but I know your heart is with the Maroon. I know it really is. But you've been calling games in a variety of sports for a number of years as well, too. Let's just start here, because I feel like there's a lot of attention, and it's slowly rising. I'm hearing the buzz in the community is that the women's volleyball team right now, I think they're third in the OUA right now, and they're going to be hosting the Nationals. And what kind of excitement is being built there?
Well, a tremendous amount of excitement. And, hosting the Nationals is special. The one thing that you notice is how well supported this volleyball team is and what a great spectator sport it is. All of the volleyball clubs come out to watch. Women's volleyball team is special. They're number 8 in the country, and that's a dip actually from a couple weeks ago because they did have a couple of losses up in Queens before rebounding to beat and split with Brock on the weekend.
Who are good too.
They were number 2 in the country.
Okay.
So it was a big win for McMaster when they beat them, and it's going to be a fun tournament. They hosted the men's last year, and it was a fantastic tournament. And the women's volleyball team, you take a look at the talent level they have, the pipeline that they have built, the mix of veteran players and younger players they have, that it's not just this year, it's down the road. This team is going to be very, very exciting. But this year, their goal is, like all teams, right? They know they're hosting, but they don't want to go in through the back door. They want to win an Ontario championship. That's their focus first and foremost. And, it's a fun sport to call. It's so fast. It's so skilled. The crowd gets into it. It's just amazing. I've loved my time calling volleyball.
You did the games last year, obviously at the Nationals for the men's, and that's when I really noticed it. I'm like, Clarkie sounds good. Like, he is calling it, and he's into it. Like, he's into it. He's locked in. But you're right. Because of the crowd, because of the quickness of the sport, it's probably really hard not to be involved and get your body into it, your call, your voice. It gives you chills.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. There's a point all the time. Like, you're seeing outcomes. It's not like, somebody misses a shot, somebody gets no points, or back and forth. There's something happening every time somebody serves. Somebody's getting a point. The serve is either staying with somebody or it's going back to somebody. So there's that thing that I think that helps the fans. I think young fans love it too because of that back and forth notion. And it's something, if you're just a casual fan, I want to check out volleyball, you're going to go into Burge Gymnasium and you're going to go back and say, I'm coming back because of how the crowd gets into it and how good. I mean, that's the thing, how good these players are. Right. I mean, I'm just amazed by some of the things I see, the leaping ability, and some of the athleticism on display. It's fun.
The men's side, they lose a legendary coach, yet the ship is stable, doing well, second place in the O.
They lost a legendary coach. They lost 2 fifth-year seniors, 6'10", 6'8", Ledarski and Woj Krai. They lost the best prospect that you could probably have in volleyball with Sam Cooper, who's moved on. I believe he's playing professionally. And somehow they have continued to be resilient. Again, they've got talent that stayed on, and it's younger talent. And they've got a couple players who have come up. I'm like, where are these guys coming from, and how good are they? So, I mean, excellence breeds excellence, and so I expected that McMaster men's team to take a step back this year, but they're ranked, I believe, they're number 4 in the country, and I think it's a little bit more wide open. Last year, Trinity Western came in, and these guys were like rock stars, and the way they hit the ball,
they're like pro.
Yeah, they were pro, and this year they're kind of ranked 7 or 8, and I think it's come back to the pack a little bit. So they have a chance to get back to a national Final 8 as well. So yeah, volleyball, the 2 ranked teams in volleyball. That's that's hard to ignore.
No, and you're doing something special there. Basketball too. Where are we in basketball for the MAC program right now?
Rebuilding for the women. When you have one of the best players in the program, Sarah Gates, who is your all-time leading scorer, who has your school record for points in a game, move on to the pros, there's a step back. But again, they've got a couple of first-year players, Emily Frankovic and Sofia Arosevic. Arosevic is the daughter of a great OUA player, Alex Arosevic, who played for Waterloo in the 90s. And they've got another point guard, Ashley Guerrero, 3 first-year players who are playing significant minutes. And their head is above water. They're a couple games above 500 this year, not their year. But down the road, a couple of years, if these players develop, then they've got a real shot. The men's team, I have a hard time figuring out because the talent is there. They've got an outstanding coach in Patrick Tatum. But they've also struggled with injuries too. Their 2 biggest players haven't played all year, so they're really going with a kind of a smaller run and gun lineup in which they've got a guy who's 6'5" playing the center position, but not. But so it's hard to figure out where they are. They're an above 500 team, but they've kind of been in this holding pattern for a few years in a row. But again, they keep bringing in talented players, and the future does look bright. But it used to be the MAC was a basketball school, right? Perennial trips to Halifax for the men for the Final 8, and the women had that great run that culminated with their national championship in 2019.
How good was that?
And that was outstanding. And now, like everything, it's a little bit more cyclical. So they're taking a step back, but I expect them to be back to prominence too.
We have to talk about this because I know it is near and dear to our heart. Then you talk about winning a Yates Cup, this McMaster Marauders football team where I was fortunate enough to call it. I wish you were there with me when that happened, and winning in Western.
Yes.
Where you and I know winning in Western.
Yeah, to you scoreboard operators at Western who feel like you're part of the team, take that.
Exactly. That's another story, folks. 2019 Yates Cup. Lost year for COVID. 2021, 3-3. Followed by back-to-back 2-6 seasons. You'd have to go way back to the Steve Bruno and Al Bruno days of the early 90s to the mid-90s. Those are Memoriale teams, I think, at one point there, too, where they weren't very good, and they weren't making the playoffs. Steph Potasic has won a Vanier Cup and led the team to a Vanier Cup and Yates Cups. This is not normal for the MAC program.
No, it's not.
Where are we with this team? Does the future look bright? I hate to bring it up, but I mean, sometimes when things don't go well, someone's got to pay the price. I don't know. Where is this MAC team right now?
It's a great question, and I was as surprised as anybody that they were 2-6 this year. I did think that they had an opportunity to kind of turn the corner. Not saying they were going to be 8-0 and up there battling Western for the Yates Cup, but I thought that maybe a 5-3 or a 6-2, but they lost some games that they should never have lost this year. I mean, their 2 wins this year were against York, who everybody beats, and Waterloo. They were 1-3 at home.
York was forfeit, was it not?
No, York was I wished York had forfeited.
Okay.
It was they basically did.
That was the year before, I think.
It was 71-0.
Okay.
It's hard to say. Their defense was very good, but I know they're losing some key players. Their offense, to me, and I'm not like a football X's and O's, been a coordinator, but I thought their play calling was a little bit strange at times, in which they were definitely like Keegan Hall is a great young quarterback.
Yes.
Has all the tools you want.
Jackson
quarterback.
Cooling.
Jackson Cooling, a great receiver. They had other weapons. The name escapes me. Jacob. Oh, jeez. He got injured at one point in the year, but they just could never ever put it together. And there were some stops and starts and some injury problems. But that's all football teams. So this is going to be a real key off season in terms of. Recruiting, replenishing some of the defensive players, because I do think that the talent level is there. Now it's all about putting it together. And whether it's coaching, I don't know. I don't know enough about the nuances of the different coordinators. Steph Potasic did not become a bad coach over the last couple of years. He's still a very talented coach. You can still see the fire in his eyes as well. So, but this is definitely, I'm from Missouri on this one. They're going to have to show me. And, I'm a big supporter of the McMaster football team, been involved calling those games for a few years. So it's a real pivotal year. And I know that's not the clearest answer I can give you, but I think that's where they are right now, because 4-12 the last 2 years is not McMaster football.
No, and unfortunately, and I don't know, so now I would say this as a parent. If I was a parent, I'd love to have Steph Potasic come in my living room and tell me why to have my kid go to McMaster to play football. I feel like he could get you there. So I think recruiting will probably still be good, but they're also looking at wins and losses, right?
Absolutely.
At some point, and a kid. I don't know how they feel about being part of a rebuilding project or whatever, but I feel like we haven't used the word rebuild with the McMaster Marauders football program in many, many of years. Retool, maybe, as you said, maybe we go 4-4, or maybe we're fighting to make the playoffs, but not making the postseason at that venue and all the stuff and all the love that gets put into that program. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, it was tough at times last year. I mean, they lost to teams, like they lost the first game to Windsor. It was a close game, a good game. We thought, okay, Windsor, it turned out to be a very good football team. They played in Western the next weekend and almost beat Western. We thought, okay, now we're rolling. And then York, they go to 1-2, and then all of a sudden, Laurier became a benchmark game. They lost that one badly. U of T was one of those losses that was inexcusable. I think there were 2 pick sixes. And then from then on, it just kept spiraling. And they still had a mathematical chance last game of the season in Ottawa and failed to score an offensive touchdown. And so, you don't score offensive touchdowns. It's hard for your defense to hold off a team all game long. And as a result, here we are.
Here we are. And I have to bring this up.
That's the second time you've said that. I have to
bring this up. Yes. And it's not so much about you. It's maybe about me, and I don't want to be too self-serving here. But I have to admit, this year, even though I was involved in a couple of games, I was a little jealous. I was a little jealous that you had another broadcast partner doing those football games. And I kept thinking, what would I say in these situations?
Yeah.
But he's pretty good. He's a pretty good color commentator, isn't he?
He's entertaining as well, and he is
Pete Diatkowski.
Yeah, Pete Diatkowski. He's a thoughtful guy. He was one of those ones in which we did need to find that chemistry in the first, couple of games, and he would admit that he was a little bit reticent, a little bit reluctant. He wasn't sure how he was analyzing the game, but once he found his comfort zone, he was very, very good. He was fun to work with. You ever want to take a long road trip with Pete? When we drove to Ottawa, I think he solved all of Hamilton's problems, infrastructure problems on the way with creative business solutions. And if you see him on Twitter, there's a reason he's one of Canada's 10 smartest people, because he's got a very thoughtful, intellectual way of looking at things. But then when he calls football, he becomes the big old offensive lineman, like always, bang, smash, crash, and analyzing the game. So, yeah, he was a lot of fun to work with. I was really looking forward to meeting Pete Dykowski, just because I'd heard so much about him. And, yeah, he was... Not to say he wasn't you, Bubba, but he was fun to work with.
You always move on to better things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and you did, so, and I accept that, right?
Yep.
So, and that was great. But it was great to hear him, because we do know him as a guy. You could throw him in the Simone Lawrence category as someone that Hamilton they love, even though he went to the Argonauts for a little bit. But he's a Hamiltonian, a guy that represents Hamilton. And you're right. You follow him on social media, and he's not just talking sports. He's pretty knowledgeable on a lot of things.
He took a run at politics a couple of years ago. I believe he took a run at running for council. He kind of entered late in the game. It would not shock me to see him, go back into it again. I just think he's got one of those minds that's always moving.
Right.
And you're right. He's become a true Hamiltonian, married, 2 kids, now is a part of the fabric of the city. It wouldn't surprise me to see him delve into that aspect too.
Let's end on this and on family.
Yeah.
We touched on it a little bit there. Your daughter got something special. I know you love spending time with her, playing a high level of hockey right now. Yep. As you may know, we had a couple of members of the PWHL's Toronto team, and Emma Malte and Renata Fast here. She's a goaltender.
Yes.
There's got to be something cool for her to turn on that TV right now, whether it be TSN or Sportsnet, and see those women playing hockey, and that thinking maybe I might be the next Emrys Mashmeyer.
Yep. You know what? You always have a dream when you play sports. And now that dream is more of reality with the PWHL and what they've been able to do in such a short amount of time. It's special for Isla. I mean, she's playing A-level hockey this year as a goalie. She's tall. She's competitive. I'm not looking at this through a father's eyes, though I am looking at it through a father's eye. I think she's a very, very good goalie with a bright future. And you mentioned, having Emma Malte on here and Renata Fast. Emma Malte, Nelson grad, by the way. Renata Fast. Isla has been to camps with them too, so she's had a chance to meet them and know there, and now she can see them in this other grander stage. It gives everybody hope. It gives everybody purpose, and it makes, as you said, those dreams. Maybe you can see down the road that this could be me. And we went to go see the World's Women Championships in Brampton. Had a great time. Watched some of the games there. We try to watch as much if it's live and in the area. We'll try to get to a game as well. She's a student of hockey. She's consumed by hockey. She loves the sports, and having the PWHL is just another layer for her. It's fun.
And it's good. I don't know why I have to feel like I have to say this, that it's good hockey, but it is.
It's great hockey. It's great hockey. I mean, the skill level of the women that are playing. I mean, this is the best of the best. It's why the games are all so low scoring and close, because you literally have the best players in the world from Canada, the United States, some from Sweden, even Finland, who are all coming together and playing against each other. And it's competitive. And you can see, again, the crowds, right? That's the big thing. The big thing was taking the women's league that was in kind of Ontario and Canada before, taking it out of small arenas and putting it in venues which are TV friendly and fill stands. And they're going to sell out, Scotiabank Arena when they play. Toronto plays, I think, Montreal in a couple of weeks. I said I'm amazed about it's a sports marketing course, basically, and what they've been able to do in such a short amount of time.
And I like the fact that, and I know, again, you have to look back at where that sport came from. We didn't see a lot of slap shots. Everything was a wrist shot, no body contact. Those women out there throwing their weight around now. And there's a lot of chatter after the whistle as well, too.
Yeah, it's not friendly chatter too. I mean, I know a lot of these players know each other well, but it's a physical brand of hockey. They've obviously relaxed the rules towards body contact a little bit, and I think there's some growing pains with that. But that's going to happen with when you have a rule that's transitional in nature all the time. But even without the idea of body checking, it was a physical, fast game. Like you weren't sitting there with the puck for too long, or else you would have either been lost the puck or staring at the ceiling. So yeah, it's a very physical, very competitive, and I said an outstanding brand of hockey. Love it.
This has been an outstanding chat, Steve.
Yep.
And I'm really looking forward to this because we don't get we got an opportunity to chat on the phone or whatever.
Yeah,
we don't
for
have an
sure.
opportunity to sit here and talk sports in this format. And every time we, as I've said it before, you kind of talk on when I'm doing sports, and it's these little sound clips or whatever. But an opportunity for many people to know what you do. Hey, folks, Niagara IceDogs are on the way up. McMaster Sports, volleyball, basketball, football coming around. It's all coming up here, and it's so great for you to be able to promote those sports and talk about them in such a positive manner, and yourself. I always say good luck to you, and I just love watching your work because it's been so good and has matured over the years as well too.
Thank you. Well, I said it was special. Like I couldn't wait once you extended the invite for me to come here and be able to chat about sports, and thank you for the kind words. Greatly appreciated, and best to you as well. Maybe someday we'll be back together again.
Maybe. Come back
know.
on the red couch anytime.
Love to.
Right on. Hey, folks, that's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And if I may ask, if you are an athlete, team, or an event, and you want to be promoted, the Sportsline podcast wants to hear your story. Folks, if you like what you see and what you're hearing, please hit that thumbs up, like, subscribe, wherever you watch or listen to your podcast. For the talented minds and hands that make the Sportsline podcast possible, I thank you. And we'll see you on Friday.